Consider this. You stand at the edge of a mirror, but instead of your reflection, you see fragments of moments long gone. A childhood laugh, a whispered regret, a door slammed shut. You try to step away, but the glass follows, warping into funhouse distortions of who you once were. A voice you've spent years silencing murmurs, "You cannot outrun what made you." This is not a nightmare. It is the silent arithmetic of existence. Every decision you've made, every identity you've claimed, every future you've sworn to build, they are all ghosts negotiating with the unalterable fact of your past. Society sells you liberation, reinvent yourself, shed your history, become new. But beneath the surface, a darker truth festers. The past is not a shadow you leave behind. It is the soil in which you're rooted, rotten or fertile. It feeds every cell of who you are. What if the self-help mantras and digital rebranding are illusions? What if the versions of yourself you've buried, the shameful act, the unforgivable failure, the love that cracked your ribs open, are not erased, but coiled in your marrow, steering your present like puppet strings? You marry someone who mirrors your absent parent. You sabotage opportunities that threaten to eclipse old, comfortable fears. You repeat patterns like a scratched record, screaming internally as the needle drags you back. Here lies the paradox. The past is irretrievably gone, yet it breathes inside you, immortal. You are both prisoner and architect. Philosophers whisper of eternal recurrence. Neuroscientists cite synaptic pathways carved by repetition. But neither fully answers the visceral dread of a man who, at 45, still hears his father's scorn in every compliment. Why does the mind cling to what wounds it? Why does time, that linear illusion, collapse when trauma or longing strikes? You've tried to forget. You've burned letters, moved cities, drowned memories in distractions. Yet in the quietest hours, they return, not as memories but as presences. A scent, a tone of voice, a shadow at the edge of sleep, and suddenly you're 16 again, trembling with the same inadequacy. The past is not a place, it's a parasite. But what if this isn't a curse? What if the key to freedom lies not in escape, but in a confrontation so brutal it rewires your soul? The paradox is this. You are told you have a past, yet you are your past, a walking mosaic of every scar and synapse forged by time. To understand why escape is impossible, you must first confront the machinery of memory itself. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the reservoir of all you've disowned, the subconscious vault where repressed desires and traumas ferment. Friedrich Nietzsche warned, when you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you, a poetic nod to the recursive dance between identity and history. But these are not mere metaphors. Your brain, a survivalist organ, is wired to conflate the past with prophecy. Neurologically, the amygdala stamps emotional events with permanence, while the prefrontal cortex rationalizes them into narratives. A childhood humiliation isn't just a memory, it's a live wire that hijacks your adult decisions. You avoid public speaking not because of the present, but because a 10-year-old version of you still feels the heat of classmates' laughter. The past isn't stored, it's alive, metabolizing into your present like a ghostly second heartbeat. Society complicates this further. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that hell is other people, but he might as well have said, hell is the past other people imposed on you. Cultural norms, familial expectations, and systemic traumas sculpt your psyche long before you're conscious of their hands. Consider the child praised only for achievement, now a CEO chasing validation through burnout. or the refugee who rebuilds a life yet flinches at slamming doors, her nervous system forever tuned to the rhythms of war. These are not failures of will, they are the aftershocks of a world that etched itself into your bones. Ancient philosophies grasped this duality. The Buddhist concept of samskaras, mental imprints left by past actions, mirrors modern neuroscience's understanding of neural pathways. Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic philosopher, declared, "No man steps in the same river twice, yet failed to add, because the river is him." You are both the water and the erosion, shaped by currents you never chose. Even your attempts at reinvention are haunted. Arthur Schopenhauer, that prophet of pessimism, wrote that a man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants. Your desires, your fears, your silent compulsions, they are heirs to a kingdom you didn't build. Herein lies the trap. The more you flee, the more you feed the phantom. Viktor Frankl, survivor of Auschwitz, unearthed a harrowing truth in the camps. Those who severed ties with their past, the loves, losses and selves they'd been, were the first to collapse. Without the anchor of memory, the mind dissolves. Yet modern culture peddles the opposite lie. Delete your history. Optimize your identity. Become a brand. We curate social media personas to bury shame, only to find our posts grow more desperate, more fragmented, digital tombstones for the selves we've assassinated. This is the psychological quicksand. To reject your past is to reject the raw material of your consciousness, but to submit to it wholly is to surrender agency. The tension is existential, primal. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World imagined a society drugged into blissful amnesia. Yet even there, the repressed resurfaced as primal screams in the night. You cannot amputate your history without bleeding out. But what if the past is neither a life sentence nor a curse? What if it is a cipher, a codex of compulsions waiting to be decrypted? You walk through life believing you choose your path, careers, relationships, the person you vow to become. But beneath this illusion of autonomy, the past operates like a puppeteer, pulling strings you refuse to see. Cognitive scientists call it confirmation bias. Your brain cherry-picks evidence to confirm what it already knows, reinforcing old narratives. A child labeled clumsy grows into an adult who laughs off athletic goals, not because they're incapable, but because their neural circuitry has fossilized a lie. The past becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you mistake its script for destiny. Consider the halo effect, where early impressions distort present reality. A parent's dismissal of your childhood dreams tints how you perceive every future opportunity, not as potential, but as a minefield of inevitable failure. Even your triumphs feel hollow, overshadowed by an ancient voice hissing, "You don't deserve this." Neurologically, the brain's default mode network, the region active during self-reflection, prioritizes familiar patterns over novel truths. You are, quite literally, a prisoner of precedent. But the consequences run deeper than individual suffering. Societies, too, are haunted by collective pasts they've failed to integrate. Wars fought centuries ago still map modern borders. Ancestral traumas encode themselves in cultural DNA. In The Wretched of the Earth, Frantz Fanon dissected how colonized nations internalize the psychological scars of oppression, passing down cycles of shame and rage. Similarly, a 21st century workers' burnout isn't just personal, it's the echo of industrial revolution values equating productivity with worth. You inherit not just your ancestors' genes, but their unresolved grief. The body itself becomes an archive. Research in epigenetics reveals that trauma can alter gene expression, passing fear responses down generations. A Holocaust survivor's grandchild might panic at the smell of smoke, not because they experienced war, but because their cells remember. Even your immune system, as studies suggest, carries imprints of past stressors, leaving you vulnerable to illness long after the threat has faded. The past isn't a story, it's a biological occupation. Cultural conditioning amplifies this. Social media algorithms feed you content that mirrors your existing beliefs, creating echo chambers that resurrect old prejudices in digital form. You scroll through curated feeds, unaware that every click reinforces neural pathways carved by adolescence. The teenage outcast, now an adult, still seeks validation through likes, their dopamine receptors lighting up to the same rhythm of acceptance they craved at 15. Technology, marketed as liberation, becomes a prison warden. Meanwhile, philosophers like Michel Foucault warned of historical amnesia, the societal habit of erasing uncomfortable truths only to have them resurface as pathologies. America's refusal to confront its legacy of slavery manifests as systemic racism. A family that never speaks of addiction breeds generations of secret addicts. The past denied doesn't vanish, it metastasizes. And what of love? Attachment theory reveals that your adult relationships are often reenactments of early caregiver dynamics. The aloof partner you chase mirrors an emotionally distant parent. The friend you cling to replicates a sibling rivalry you thought you'd escaped. Even your type is a neurological imprint, a smell, a laugh, a gesture that subconsciously mirrors someone who shaped you. You don't choose who you love. You choose who feels like home, even when home was a war zone. The most insidious consequence: time distortion. Psychologists identify telescoping, where traumatic events feel perpetually recent, their emotional vividness refusing to fade. A betrayal from decades ago still tightens your chest, while joyful memories dissolve like smoke. Your brain, wired for survival, clings to pain as a defense mechanism. In doing so, it traps you in a perpetual present-tense hell, where yesterday's wounds still bleed. You become a living anachronism. Your politics, tastes, and fears are relics of bygone eras, yet you mistake them for originality. The rebel who swore to reject their parents' values unknowingly adopts their judgmental tone. The minimalist who escaped consumerism still hoards emotional baggage. Even your revolutions are reactions, defined by what you oppose, not what you create. But here's the twist. These chains are not flaws, they are evolutionary adaptations. Your brain clings to the past because it once kept you safe. Societies repeat history because chaos is costlier than stagnation. The problem isn't the mechanism, it's the mismatch. Ancient wiring collides with modern complexity, leaving you stranded between survival and transcendence. The past has infiltrated your synapses, your cells, your civilization. But what if the very thing that binds you also holds the key? You've been lied to. Liberation isn't found in outrunning your past. It's seized by turning to face it, not as a supplicant, but as a thief. Steal back the fire it hoarded. This is not acceptance, it's alchemy. Carl Jung's shadow work offers the first clue. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Integration, not eradication, is the path. The alcoholic who admits his father's ghost, lives in his cravings, disarms its power. The people-pleaser who traces her compulsion to a childhood of walking on eggshells, rewires her reflexes. The past's grip weakens when dragged into the light. But this is not passive introspection, it's a revolt. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, often misunderstood as fatalism, holds the key. What if someday or night a demon were to say to you, "This life as you now live it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more"? Would you crumble, or would you choose your life as it is with all its scars? That is the question that cracks the chains. History is littered with rebels who weaponize their pasts. Viktor Frankl in Auschwitz, stripped of everything, discovered freedom in one radical act. He chose his response to suffering. By reframing torment as a test of meaning, he defied the camp's dehumanization. Nelson Mandela mined 27 years of imprisonment to fuel forgiveness, not vengeance. Frida Kahlo transformed physical agony into surrealist masterpieces, her pain made sacred on canvas. These were not optimists. They were alchemists who stared into the abyss and forged new laws of physics. The science of neuroplasticity proves their intuition true. The brain is not a tomb of dead synapses, but a living forest. Every time you reinterpret a memory, my father's criticism wasn't about my worth, but his fear. You ignite new neural pathways. Therapies like EMDR show that even trauma, when reprocessed, loses its visceral sting. But this demands more than therapy. It requires a philosophical mutiny. Consider the Stoics, who diced fate into two realms: what happens and how you meet it. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote meditations on transforming chaos into clarity while battling barbarians and plague. Or the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, not to hide cracks, but to highlight them as marks of survival. These are blueprints for rebellion. The counterintuitive truth: your past is not a script, it's raw material. The abusive parent, the failed venture, the addiction, they are clay. You are the sculptor, the man who channeled his childhood neglect into founding orphanages, the woman who weaponized her grief to lobby for cancer research. These are not stories of overcoming, but of reclamation. They did not transcend their past. They harnessed its chaos to create meaning hotter than shame. Here's how to begin. Become an archaeologist of self. Map your compulsions to their roots. Why does criticism paralyze you? Whose voice is it really? Rewrite the narrative. Trauma lives in the unsaid. Speak it, paint it, scream it, externalize the poison. Practice radical accountability. Sartre was right. Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Blame is passive. Agency is revolt. Inject the past with new meaning. The Buddhist concept of paravritti, turning the poison into medicine, turns victims into shamans. But beware, this is not redemption porn. The scars remain. Mandela still woke in cold sweats. Kahlo's body still failed her. The rebellion isn't about erasing pain. It's about refusing to let it govern. You are not breaking chains. You are melting them down to build bridges. The past, once a dictator, becomes a reluctant ally. It whispers, "You think you've won." You smile, knowing the war was never about winning, but becoming sovereign. The mirror cracks, not into fragments, but into a prism. What you once saw as shards of a broken self now refract light into colors you've never named. Here is the blinding truth. You were never meant to escape your past. You were meant to become its equal. The past is not a cage, it is a crucible. Every humiliation, every joy, every betrayal was a furnace that tempered the alloy of your soul. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence was never a curse, it was an invitation. What if you dared to love your life exactly as it has been? To say to the child who still weeps inside you, the lover who gutted you, the failures that carved you hollow, You are mine, and I will make you holy. This is the alchemy no one told you of, the power to transmute leaden memories into gold by the sheer force of your gaze. Viktor Frankl's logotherapy whispers the secret. Meaning is not found, it is forged. The same hands that were bound by history can break its locks. Consider the oak tree, which grows strongest, not in spite of storms, but because of them. Its rings are not scars, they are testaments. You are that oak. Your past is not a chain around your ankles, it is the soil that nourishes your reach toward the sky. The trauma that once strangled you becomes the root system feeding your resilience. The love that abandoned you becomes the photosynthesis turning loss into light. This is the paradox of existence. You are both the wound and the suture. Sartre's "condemned to be free" cuts deeper here. Freedom is not the absence of your past. It is the audacity to reanimate it. When Jung urged integration of the shadow, he was not asking for surrender. He demanded a negotiation, a treaty between who you were and who you choose to be. The parent's voice in your head, the lover's ghost in your bed, the child's terror in your veins, they are not occupiers, they are emissaries. They came to teach you the language of your own depth. Think of the phoenix. It does not rise from the ashes, it rises because of them. The fire is not its end, it is its metamorphosis. Your past is that fire. Mandela walked out of 27 years in prison, not as a man freed from his past, but as a man who had married his suffering to his purpose. He did not forgive to erase history, he forgave to rewrite its role in his story. The pain remained, but it no longer defined, it refined. Here lies the ultimate rebellion. Stop trying to survive your past. Start speaking with it. Sit with the child who learned to hide. Debate the adolescent who believed they were unlovable. Forgive the adult who failed. These are not exorcisms, they are dialogues. When neuroscientists speak of reconsolidation, the brain's ability to rewrite memories with new meaning, they echo an ancient truth. You are the author, not the scribe. The Japanese art of kintsugi does not disguise broken pottery with gold. It makes the break sacred. Your cracks too are luminous. The anxiety that claws at you, it is the same instinct that once kept your ancestors alive. The perfectionism that tortures you, a distorted echo of your capacity to dream. Even your darkest impulses are compasses pointing toward unmet needs. So let us abandon the language of escape. Let us speak instead of orchestration. The past is not a dictator. It is an instrument. You are the composer. The notes are fixed, but the arrangement is yours. That time you were betrayed. A minor chord that deepens the symphony. The year you lost everything. A rest, a pause, that makes the next movement swell louder. The great tragedy of modern life is not that we are haunted by our past, but that we mistake the haunting for a curse. Ghosts are just unanswered questions. What if you stopped fleeing them and turned instead to ask, what do you need me to understand? The answer might terrify you, it might shatter you, but from that rubble you can build a self that no longer fears its reflection. In the end, the mirror was never your enemy. It was a portal. Step through it. There, in the labyrinth of your history, you will find not a minotaur, but a thread, woven from every choice, every fall, every resurrection. Follow it back to yourself. You are not who you were. You are who you are because you were. And in that equation, there is a freedom more ferocious than any amnesia. The past cannot be changed, but it can be chosen. Chosen as foundation, chosen as fuel, chosen as proof that even in the wreckage, you are still breathing, still capable of sparking fire from the debris. So rise, not in spite, not in defiance, but in kinship with all you've survived. The world needs not your reinvention, but your reclamation. The past is not behind you, it is within, and it is waiting, finally, to be seen.